And it's our pleasure to welcome Todd Husak back to the KNBR airwaves. Niners embarking on their off season, and we have yet to talk to Todd since the Niners got beaten by Seattle 41-6. But he's with us on the UMA guest line to talk all things 49ers. Todd, good to see you, man. How are you?
Good to be here. Tough end to a pretty special season, I think. But that one on Saturday got off to a bad start and didn't get much better after that. I think just a confluence of short week. Seattle was healthy and rested. Niners were not. And just it wasn't the team we had been accustomed to watching, I think, down the stretch, a team that had played so well offensively. And give Seattle a lot of credit. That's a really good team on both sides of the ball, and they started off with a big play on special teams. Those are areas that the 49ers had to decisively win, especially the special teams, because of the mismatches maybe up front on both sides. And when you give up a big play like that to start the game, tough way to start, and they just couldn't seem to bounce back.
We'll go micro, but first let's go a little macro on the season. I mean, the Niners did have a pretty easy schedule, but then, they wound up losing Brock Purdy for half the season. But Mac Jones stepped in and played great. But then, Nick Bosa went out for the year early. And then Fred Warner went out for the year in the middle of October. And, really Robert Saleh had to kind of piecemeal this thing together on all three levels of his defense. They were dead last in the NFL in sacks by a wide margin. They had very little pass rush. Didn't have a lot of talent on that second level without Fred Warner. It was very much just kind of a makeshift guys off the street situation. It was a very young secondary. And yet Robert Saleh got, I thought, the most out of this defense. And overall, I mean, it's hard to, when you factor in everything that happened this year, 12 wins, 12-5 is a pretty good regular season. And then, I really did. I kept saying it going into the Philly game. I feel like they got one big shot to fire, and they fired. They showed up in Philadelphia, and they knocked off the world champion Eagles, beating them 23-19. And then they just kind of ran out of gas. I mean, back to back short weeks didn't help. Seattle was younger, more talented, fresher, healthier, and they just took it to the 49ers from pillar to post, man. It was all Seahawks in the divisional round, 41-6. But what was your takeaway on the year? Because there were, on one hand, you could be very disappointed of how things ended and the fact that the Niners, are going to maybe watch a division rival win the Super Bowl in their own stadium. And there's a lot of bitterness that goes along with that. But on the other hand, when you factor in all the adversity, man, I mean, how could you not say it was a good year?
Yeah, I think the takeaway is that a 12-win season, regardless of how it ends, I think you have to be pretty proud of how this team battled. And it was the emotional loss, not just the physical losses of Bosa and Warner and Purdy for a time and Kittle for a time, but the emotional toll that takes when your leaders are not there week in and week out. I think there's a lot of positive takeaways. I think some of the young players on both sides of the ball stepped up. I think Christian McCaffrey had one of his best seasons ever. You talk about a warrior and a guy that is fun to watch every single week. I mean, he brought it every week. And when there wasn't a lot of help around him, especially early in the year where there were games where he was getting 12 targets and 25 carries. Like, that's a workload. He was a lot of fun to watch. Purdy down the stretch, those last 6 games where they won 6 in a row, like, he was awesome. Back-to-back weeks of 5 touchdowns. I think he looked like the player that, Larry, you and I saw in preseason. Like, this guy is poised for a breakout year. I mean, not that he hasn't broken out before, but like MVP type season, which he played like one during that 6-game win streak. So I think there's a lot of positives. The youth on defense, we saw guys take steps in the positive direction. I think Alfred Collins, CJ West played well down the stretch. Some of those young players in the secondary. I mean, the secondary was inexperienced, but they didn't give up a ton of big plays. Like, they were pretty tough. But to your point, like, it reminded me when you were talking about them, it reminded me of the movie Major League, where the airplane comes up, like, oh, 757 to Milwaukee. No, that's you. And that airplane comes up with like duct tape and no electricity. It's like, I mean, that's kind of what they had to do at the end of the season. It got the job done, but they were duct taping it together with guys, like you said, Kendricks and Wallow and guys that weren't on the team a month prior coming in and stepping up against the Eagles. But I think there's also, as you look, so the takeaway is these guys are built to win mentally. Like it would have been very easy. I think many teams in the NFL are not built to come back from that many devastating injuries and just emotionally get up for every week. And hey, we can win this game without weapons on offense, without weapons on the outside. And Pearsall missed most of the season. And so the fact that they were mentally able to prepare and beat some teams that were good teams down the stretch. I know their last place schedule, but the AFC South ended up being pretty good. So it's not negative, but as you look forward, I think there's a lot of questions that this team's a year older. And Trent Williams, like there's going to be some guys that need to be replaced, and you have to upgrade at certain positions in order for them to take this next step. I think that one of the biggest takeaways as we go back to last offseason, are they going to pay Purdy and how's that going to work out? They made the right investment in the right guy. Purdy is the guy that can lead this team to a Super Bowl. There's no question about it. The way he played, the way he battled, he needs some pieces around him like every quarterback does, but I think he's got what it takes to win it all.
Quick shout out, this segment is sponsored by Fanatics Live. Fanatics Live is a mobile app where you can jump into live sports card rips and breaks with hosts walking you through everything in real time, even if you're new to collecting. There are two main ways to use it. Instant rips let you buy a pack on screen, watch it get ripped live, and every pack is a real professionally graded card inside. Once it hits, the card goes straight into your collection where you can keep it, sell it for credit, or have it shipped to your house. You can also join breaks where you can buy a team spot instead of a whole box. And if your team hits when they open it live, those cards are yours. If you want to try it out, new users get a free instant rips pack with a graded card inside. Just click the link in the description, download Fanatics Live, and join your first stream. It's fun. It's a fun, easy way to get into sports cards and experience the hobby live. Oh, looks like we got a Jerome Bettis card. I like that. Jerome Bettis was a beast with the Rams. Probably the preeminent power back of his era. Great grab there. I like that. Yeah, I mean, to me, if they're, what are the positives of this year? I mean, there should never be any conversation again about, is Shanahan good enough? Is Purdy good enough? I know lots of people love to park their car right there and debate those things, but there's no there's no need to debate that. Those things have been decided. What I thought was really interesting was Mac Jones. I mean, Jones threw for, he took over. Brock got hurt in week 1. He took over in week 2. They beat the Saints. Then they beat the Cardinals. They lose to Jacksonville, but they bounce back and they beat the Rams in overtime in LA, maybe the win of the year. And Jones in that game threw for 342 yards. And then Tampa Bay throws for 347 yards, but they lose. They lose Fred Warner that day. But then they bounce back with Jones and they beat the Atlanta Falcons, and they lost in a game where Houston's defense totally snuffed them out. But then they bounced back against the New York Giants and won again with Jones. And then Jones wound up starting the last game before Purdy came back, and they lost to the Rams 42-26. But the resiliency, this team never lost 2 in a row all year. And then when Purdy got back in the lineup in mid-November, he won 6 in a row until losing the final game of the year to Seattle. So I guess the question is this. I mean, what should be learned from Mac Jones this year? Is it the 49ers were a pretty flawed team, but they had a very good backup quarterback. And you could argue, Todd, that the presence of that very good backup quarterback saved their season and maybe changed the whole outlook on the franchise to some degree because of the way he kept them afloat, and they, found a way to the playoffs. They don't find a way to the playoffs if they have Josh Dobbs. They don't find a way to the playoffs if they have Brandon Allen. That's what they had the year before. So now here we are, and Jones has had a great year, and brilliantly they signed him to a 2-year deal with a $7 million price tag in the second year. It's very affordable. Shanahan said, I fully expect him to be on the team next year. And yet Lynch is like, hey, well, listen, and I know the Niners have a lot of building to do. And man, I'm sure whatever assets they could acquire for Mac Jones's services would be very, very attractive. And it's going to be hard to pass up, especially if, if somebody offers you a second round pick or the ability to move up in the first round, even. It's going to be hard to pass up. But I almost feel like maybe the prudent thing to do is to stay with Jones for another year. Let Purdy prove that he can be healthy. Have that insurance policy against your season. Have 2 quarterbacks you can win with, and figure out a way to rebuild this roster in other ways without trading Jones. Where are you on Mac Jones? Should they keep him? Should they move him? Is it all predicated on what the offer is? How do you see Jones and the Niners moving forward? Do you see Jones and the Niners moving forward?
It's a great question. I think going to be a great debate over the next few months. I think, yes, that was one of the best offseason signings. I think Mac Jones and Robert Saleh paid off huge dividends this season by making those moves. And Mac Jones is a first-round talent. There's no doubt about it. And I think there's 2 ways to view it. Number one, Mac Jones is talented, and his services were wasted on other teams that just don't have the ability to coach up quarterbacks or run a sophisticated offense or a dynamic offense. The other way to look at it is Shanahan can make a quarterback's career, which he did with Sam Darnold, who went on to bigger and better things, and he's now in the NFC Championship game, and he'll do it with Mac Jones. So I do think you have to weigh the offer. I do think Mac Jones will not be on the team in 2 years unless something catastrophic happens. So do you look at that as we can acquire assets that we desperately need to upgrade at other positions? I think a bad case scenario would be to have Mac Jones on the team next year, Brock Purdy stays healthy, and then you lose Mac Jones the following year for nothing. Do you have enough faith that Shanahan and Lynch can pull off another reclamation project with quarterbacks who have been cast away from other places that have talent and have the ability to come into a 49er system and operate at a high level? There's not a ton of quarterbacks in the league that can do that, but there might be a few. And so how do you balance that with the security blanket of having a really good backup quarterback who can come in and prove that he can win games? He was leading the NFL in passing when he was playing. He didn't just come in and hold the clipboard. He played at a high level. So it'll be a fascinating how desperate. If Minnesota had Mac Jones all season, Minnesota makes the playoffs, most likely, right? I mean, there's a handful of teams like that. Houston Texans, if they had Mac Jones, there's a very good chance they're playing this weekend. And so there's teams that might look at Mac Jones as a big upgrade over their current situation. What are they willing to give up for him? And does that make the 49ers markedly better at that position? I think you have to look at it, because I would hate to see Mac leave in 2 seasons or after next year with nothing in return. But I also understand the value of a backup quarterback. Even like there's a handful of starting quarterbacks that will start next season that are not nearly as good as Mac Jones. And that's reality. And we saw it. I think there was something like in week 15 out of the 32 teams, there was something like 15 guys who started the season for that team. They were not playing, and whether it was they got pulled, they weren't good enough, they got hurt. There's a ton of turnover at that position across the league. So having a good backup is certainly valuable. And so I think it's a great debate. I would love to see if you can get, somebody threw out, do you trade him for Jefferson? Yes, like absolutely. I think the Vikings would be crazy to get rid of Jefferson, but if you can upgrade to at a position like that, I think you have to take a hard look at it, because that, offensive line, like there are certain positions of need that the 49ers have, and maybe it's draft capital, but the draft's a crapshoot, as we've all seen. Like the 49ers have had success in later rounds. You look at a team like the Seahawks and the Rams, who have really built their rosters through not just drafting 4th and 5th round starters, but those top end players, those 1st and 2nd rounders, are having a huge impact. And the 49ers haven't had a huge success rate on those top picks. I'd love to get, if you can get a couple proven commodities for Mac Jones, I think you have to take a real hard look at that.
Arizona, I think, has the 3rd pick in the draft. And I could definitely see them moving on from Kyler, wanting Mac Jones, and maybe even, who knows, maybe even hiring Clint Kubiak as the OC. And then Jones probably even makes more sense. And outside of Fernando Mendoza, this is not a great quarterback draft. Dante Moore went back to school, and there's not a bevy of great quarterback prospects. So this all sets up really nicely for the 49ers as far as supply and demand. I guess the question is this. Are you comfortable going into next year with Curtis Rourke and, let's say, Adrian Martinez as the 2 and the 3? And then like reclamation project quarterbacks, the only 2 guys I see out there would be like Zach Wilson and maybe Marcus Mariota, as far as young quarterbacks that, may look at this situation and say, I could see Zach Wilson saying, get me to San Francisco. My God, look what happened to Darnold. Look what happened to Mac. That could be me. Let me save myself. So if I'm Zach Wilson, I consider paying the Niners to come play here for 1 year and sit behind Purdy and learn from Shanahan and learn from Purdy. So, are you okay with Zach Wilson and as the 2? What do you think of Rourke? What do you think of Martinez? Is that not good enough? Do they need to have a more established, ready to step in second quarterback? I think how do you see that?
Yeah, I think the unknown Rourke might be good. We haven't seen any really of him. Adrian Martinez, I don't think that's the answer. I think for a team that might be building, you have a little bit more leeway, but for a team that needs to win now, as Trent Williams is nearing the end of his career, Christian McCaffrey, who knows how many top end years he has left. Like the window, it's not closed, but it's closing. Can Bosa and Warner stay healthy? Like those guys are difference makers on the defensive side. Can this team compete for a world championship, for a Super Bowl with those guys back and healthy? And if Brock Purdy goes down, I think the difference is with Brock Purdy, you heard how his teammates talked about him early on. Like, hey, there was a full belief that this guy was going to come in and play well. He had shown enough in practice and in the preseason where I don't know, and part of it is just Rourke hasn't played. He's been hurt. I'd love to see, there's a guy I'm going after 2 Stanford guys, but like Davis Mills and Tanner McKee. Those guys have real potential, I think, to start in this league. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be available necessarily, but if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, I look hard at trading Jalen Hurts and going with Tanner McKee. What we've seen from McKee when he's gotten a chance to play, I think he's an upgrade over Jalen Hurts. And if you can get pieces back, they might be better positioned to compete for a Super Bowl next year. So I don't know. Yes, the quarterback position is hugely important. I don't know if Zach Wilson's a great fit. I like his certainly being the number 2 pick in the draft. He's got the physical tools. There's questions about his maturity and whether or not he's ready to lead a team. He rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And I think maybe that's an opportunity for a culturally strong organization like the 49ers to come in and turn a guy around. I don't know. I think that's a gamble. But I do trust that Shanahan can get the most out of his quarterbacks if they have the upside and the ability, like we saw this year with Mac Jones. Mac Jones was cut by Jacksonville. His career was not on the rise. He came to San Francisco with the understanding that he's going to back up and learn and maybe take a break from being a starter. And he ends up being one of the hotter potential targets now for other teams who are looking for a quarterback. So yes, I would agree. If you're a talented backup, you're begging to come play for the 49ers, which puts them in a good position to land those quality backups. So I think you have to look around the league and see. I mean, Kyler Murray, our team's going to take a chance on Kyler Murray to be their starter next year. I don't know. He's a different type of quarterback.
I would take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So is that a guy that wants to come in and grow up and learn. I mean, there are questions about his work ethic, and certainly his inconsistent play, I think, shows that he was not capable of running an offense week to week and getting it done. He's got all the tools you want to see: the speed, the arm strength, the elusiveness. Can he handle a playbook like the 49ers have? I don't know. But that would be that, like a guy like that, that clearly has the ability, that has shown he can be a player at times, really. And Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl his rookie season, right? He showed the ability. It just fell off very quickly. But he showed it. And so Kyler Murray has shown it. What he hasn't shown is the ability to be consistent. So I don't know. I think there'd be some interesting targets. I'd steer away from Zach Wilson, but we'll see. Part of it depends on what would teams be willing to give up to bring in Mac Jones.
Yeah.
To your earlier point.
It's a, this is a very interesting angle on how they rebuild and how they move forward. Let's talk about CMC for a second. He's had years in the past where he's had 400 plus touches, and the next season he winds up missing 10 games, 13 games. I mean, he's missed a lot of games, years coming off of a lot of touches, and he's coming off a 450 plus touch season. What do you see for him? I mean, he made it perfectly clear. He's like, hey, if they want to go bring in another back to share the load, I'm all for that. He didn't sound in any way like he was against it. And yet he's a guy that, we all kind of know wants every touch and every carry. And heck, they barely used Brian Robinson, despite the fact that he had been an NFL starter. I mean, and there was a playoff. They didn't use him at all in Philadelphia. I mean, it was just like it was all CMC. So I guess the question is, Christian obviously had a great year. Would you give him the MVP, the Offensive Player of the Year, or the Comeback Player of the Year? I think I'd give him the Offensive Player of the Year. But which award would you give him, and what do you think he's going to give them next year?
Well, I don't know if there's a more valuable team or valuable player for a team that won 12 games. Drake May had a great season. Jackson Smith and Jigba had a great season, but this was those teams had the pieces around them pretty much the whole season. Like CMC was the guy for two quarterbacks, without Kittle, without a top end wide receiver. Like he carried the load every week. Without him, is this an 8-win team, a 5-win team? Right. He was that big of a difference maker for the 49ers this season. I would personally, I'd love to see him come back in a little different role. I think I would use Brian Robinson a lot more next year. I think if you want to,
he's a free agent, so he might not even be back.
Right. And so finding a guy that can shoulder 12 to 15 carries a game, you get McCaffrey his 10 carries a game, and then get where McCaffrey I think is most valuable. And we saw it all season. Those option routes, getting him matched up against either a safety or a linebacker, there's nobody that can cover him in the NFL. So use him almost more as a wide receiver or somebody out of the backfield that can be a weapon. I'm sure it would drive him nuts not to be behind the quarterback every play. But if you want, history has shown, to your point, after a big season, he's had trouble staying healthy. And man, you could see it. You could see it in the last game against the Seahawks. He was banged up. So I'd put him on ice for about 2 months. Christian, go to a beach, take it easy, and then come back ready to go next year, but with a plan that we're going to cut back significantly on your carries between the tackles and try to get you more in space where you can make that first guy miss. I do feel like McCaffrey had a great year, but there were a few times throughout the season where he makes that first guy miss more often than not, and he was brought down. Like, is he a step slower? Sure. Everybody gets a little step slower with age. He was not the same running back, even when he was pretty healthy in the middle of the season. So knowing that, find another piece in that backfield where you can trust that running back to be productive, and then figure out ways to cut down on the load that McCaffrey has to shoulder, but maybe have him step up more as a wide receiver in the slot, coming out of the backfield, where they can use him on that option route, where that was probably the 49ers' most successful play, was McCaffrey out of the backfield all season long.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a good player, But I think he has, they've got to find a couple young backs. Maybe they have one right now in Jordan James. Maybe they need to find one or two more that they need to utilize, throughout and just, ease the burden of his workload. I mean, he proved that he could do it. I mean, he had 22 carries against the Rams in the game up there, and it was 2.6 a carry, right? It was like he was running into a wall. They had a really hard time getting him loose. But then late in the year, I mean, if you look at the Colts game, 5.6 a carry, 21 carries for 117 yards. He pounded Chicago for 6 yards, 6.1 a carry, 23 carries for 140 yards. I mean, he ran efficiently, probably more efficiently at the end of the year than he did early in the year, and it probably had to do more with his line in front of him. Let's talk about that line. Richard Sherman, who's a pretty sharp guy, was like, man, the Niners got to upgrade their line. Dante Whitner's like, in the trenches, Seahawks are bigger, stronger, and meaner than the Niners. Until the Niners revitalize their offensive and defensive lines, they're going to continue to be looking up at the Rams and Seahawks. This is Dante Whitner. The 49er offensive line, it's like we can't really decide, like, is it good, is it not good? Brendel has high grades from PFF, but I mean, when Shanahan is totally unwilling to run in the A gaps on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 in the playoffs, he's telling you that Brendel, he doesn't believe in Brendel or doesn't believe in Pooney or doesn't believe in Burford. So they got to upgrade their interior offensive line somehow. I would imagine Burford's a free agent. I got to imagine Brendel and Burford are probably in the crosshairs. McKivitz, Pooney, Trent Williams, I think those guys are good enough. But I mean, they got to upgrade this offensive line. I mean, you've played a lot of football. You've watched a lot of football. Heck, you operated behind a pretty good offensive line at Stanford. What do you think? I mean, you've seen, teams that have good and bad offensive lines. How would you grade out this 49er offensive line? Because they did not run efficiently. I mean, I could give you the Christian yards per carry average. It's, in just this year in games, 3-1, 4-2, 3-1, 2-9, 2-6, 3-2, 5-4, but 3-1, 3-8, 2-5, 6-2, 3-7, 2-7, 3-3. There's a lot of games there where he was running into a wall.
Yeah.
So, and Purdy, I think his lack of sacks has more to do with not the line, but more his ability to get away from the rush. So I don't know. I don't want to hold this line's feet to the fire and say, oh, they're the reason that they're at home. But I think it's clear that they have to upgrade it, and they need bigger, more powerful, more stout run defenders that give them more pop in the run game.
Well, they haven't addressed it in the draft the last few years. And you look at a guy like the Seahawks getting Zabel, right, from North Dakota State. Like, that guy is a road grader. He came in and played really well for them all season. It's a reason why they're such an effective offense. I think they have to find pieces, to your point, where it's an upgrade. And you rattled off all the numbers. I think you could just watch games where McCaffrey, I've talked about all season, against Indy and Chicago in particular, McCaffrey was getting through the line of scrimmage. There was movement at the point of attack, and he was making his first cut or running into his first guy, getting first contact 2 to 3 yards past line of scrimmage. Too many games he's making that cut 3 yards in the backfield. And that just shows that there's a lack of push up front at the point of attack. And so getting bigger, stronger, faster it has to be a priority. And you look at the Super Bowl champions from the last few years. Yes, Mahomes is fantastic. They had the same offensive line, I think, start all 17 regular season games for like 2 years in a row. Like, that offensive line for the Chiefs, as great as Mahomes is, that was the strength of their team. And once they got the defense going, defensive line in particular, that was a strength. The Eagles, the strength for them is up front on both sides. They can get away with having, I think, a subpar quarterback because they can get 3 yards every time they need it. And certainly their defensive pass rush is there. So those are the marks of a successful team, because they can get it done up front. And when you can run the ball and stop the run, a huge part of the 49ers offense, and maybe inconsistency on offense, is they didn't get their first 20-yard run until like week 13.
I know.
Week 14.
Crazy.
Like it was, and that's where it put so much pressure on the whole offense to get those 12 and 14 play. We saw a lot of 12 and 14, 15 play drives this year that ended up in the end zone, but there was a huge lack of big plays and explosiveness. So getting more powerful up front has to be a priority, and it's protecting Purdy, but also there were too many 2nd and 9s this year. And so that it's hard to overcome those things when you can have a strong run game and you're dealing with 2nd and 2s, or you're ripping off 40-yard chunks. It makes everything so much easier. Your play action opens up, right? I mean, it all works together. So figuring out drafting well, I think they drafted it for defense almost exclusively last season. I think they have to approach the offensive line in the same way, because Trent Williams, in all likelihood, will not be here in 2 years. And he's been the one guy they could count on when he's healthy. He's the best in the league. They need a couple other guys up front that can move people around at the point of attack. And frankly, you got to win your division, right? And so you look at the Seahawks and the Rams and what they do up front. You have to be good on the offensive line to compete with those teams and beat them consistently.
Couple last ones before we say goodbye. Gus Bradley. I'm okay with Gus Bradley coming back or staying here and being the defensive coordinator replacement to Robert Saleh. Other people are not. They want Raheem Morris, or, they want Jim Schwartz or somebody else. Are you okay with Gus Bradley, or do you like somebody else?
Schwartz would be interesting just because he's done it really well for a long time. And frankly, it'd be nice to not play against him. He's had Shanahan's number in the past, so let's get him on the same team. If you can't beat him, join him. I'd be okay with Gus Bradley. I think having some continuity because of all the turnover, I think what Shanahan has done in that coaching tree as it expands out. Having a head coach who hires really good assistants, knowing that when you have success, they're going to be gone. It takes a lot of courage, frankly, like to do that. Surround yourself with great people, knowing that they might not be there long. And they've been able to overcome it at times. But it would be good to have some continuity. I think Saleh is one of the best in the business. I think Gus Bradley has had some success in the NFL, but also had a chance to learn from Saleh and how he put together game plans, and his familiarity with the personnel would be important. So keeping somebody in-house, I'm fine with Gus Bradley. I wouldn't mind seeing Jim Schwartz because he had some pretty good playmakers.
Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett. Yeah, I'd be okay with him bringing Myles Garrett over too. That would impact things. But, the personnel is not the same, but he's a pretty good tactician and would bring some strategy that, so much of what Saleh did was, all right, we're going to keep the ball in front of us and tackle well in space. And maybe he didn't have the guys that could get to the quarterback on blitzes and things, but I think Schwartz is pretty creative in how he attacks an opposing offense. So that would be interesting, but also keeping somebody in-house and having the players deal with somebody that they're familiar with would be important too.
Invariably, when the season ends, immediately the fans and sometimes the media will run to the nuclear solution. Trade for Max Crosby, trade for Justin Jefferson, go get the big fish. And I'm all for that, believe me, but you can't always do that. I mean, you can do it if you're Brian Gutekunst and you drafted really well, 3 drafts in a row, and you want to trade a bunch of assets for Micah Parsons. You can do it because you drafted really well. But you can't do it if you've missed. And the Niners have missed. And I just don't know if I like Max Crosby, but you got like 10 other needs. And I like Justin Jefferson, but you got like 10 other needs. And I just think the Trey Lance was a big swing. The Javon Hargrave was a big swing. I don't think the 49ers are in the right point in their lineage and history and roster-wise to take that big swing. But I do understand why fans are calling for it. I do understand why media people are calling for it. It's much sexier to say, go get Justin Jefferson than to say, hey, you know what? There's a 4th round. There's a receiver in the 7th round that I really love. And that, I understand. Justin Jefferson's going to get more clicks and more attention and more reaction from fans if that's what you're seeking. What do you think? Are the Niners, can they go for the big fish, or is this not the right year for Lynch to swing big?
Would you trade Mac Jones for Max Crosby?
Absolutely. I just don't think they would. I think you'd have to trade Mac Jones, your first round pick next year, and maybe another pick, all for Max Crosby. And I don't think I would do that.
No, I think that's giving up too much. I mean, an interesting wide receiver would be like Brian Thomas, who, man, that guy's big time. He's inconsistent, but is that somebody that would fit in well? I mean, the 49ers do need a wide receiver that can win one-on-one and win down the field. That was talked about lack of explosiveness in the run game. 49ers did not throw it down the field in the passing game. They just didn't have a guy that could run by anybody. Pearsall might be that guy, but he's got to prove he can stay healthy. I think wide receiver going into the season was the biggest question mark, and it proved to be that throughout the year. Juwan Jennings had a good stretch where he was scoring touchdowns, but there wasn't the big plays that the 49ers need consistently. So, yeah, I do agree there's a lot of needs. I think Michael Williams showed enough that he can be a big-time player. He's got to stay healthy. It'd be great to have him back next year. But yes, adding top-end pieces. I don't know. Again, that's the fun of off-season football. Is the window closing on this group? And are they one piece away? I don't know if they're one piece away, but I think there's some depth away from continued. I mean, they competed this year with sometimes smoke and mirrors and guys that were third on the depth chart to start the season. So they can coach them up. That's another thing that Shanahan and that staff did so well, is get the most out of their players. But I think building a roster, I think what the draft has shown the last few years, there's receivers in the 3rd and 4th and 5th round that can come in and produce. I really like Luther Burden III. I know you were high on him.
Yeah.
Now in the stretch of the season, he might have been the Bears' most consistent, best receiver.
He looked great.
So I think there's pieces that you can pick up in that 3rd and 4th round that will add to it. The 49ers tried with Watkins, and they haven't been able to find that guy that can, and Cowing, and those guys just haven't been healthy. So maybe they're good. We just haven't seen any of them. So the 49ers, I think they need proven talent, or guys that John Lynch has been around long enough. Maybe he sees some guys on depth charts elsewhere that can come in and make an impact. You have to build through the draft, and you have to hit on those. The 49ers have gotten starters. They haven't gotten impact starters. And they need more impact players on both sides, because when injuries hit, and we talked about it in the preseason, for the 49ers to win a championship, their Hall of Famers that they have a number of Hall of Famers on, have to play at a high level. And looking back, they missed a few of those Hall of Famers most of the season. And so how do you develop those young players to become impact players? They got to figure that out and draft well, but then bring in some guys that can get to the quarterback and make plays down the field. I think those are the two areas: offensive line, players who can get to the quarterback, and impact wide receivers.